All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here for the first ever Verily interview. I've been wanting to do this kind of thing for a while now, being able to talk to local leaders in local government, things like city council, state house, state senate, kind of all up and down that roster of fields of office that don't get talked about as much, where you really don't seem to get into the details, into the nitty-gritty of how those areas of government and politics work. And so I'm very happy that today my own state house representative, Don Gillman, was willing to join us to talk for a few minutes about how she got involved in local government and how others might be able to follow that
Mhm.
example to make a difference and have an impact in their own backyards, their own communities. Thanks for being with us, Don.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
So I guess just to get started, could you maybe give folks a brief overview of what your experience has been, how you got involved in politics and government, and what your trajectory has been getting up to the state house, and how you think others might be able to follow your example in some of those areas?
Great. So, wonderful question. So, again, my name is Dawn Gillman. I live in Dassel, Minnesota, married for 31 years. I have five kids. One's still at home, and she just got her permit yesterday. So, how I got involved in politics, I've always been very fascinated and intrigued with grassroots and just being involved in what's happening in my community. So at the age of 20, I was the youngest female city council member. So I got to experience 6 years in the city council. I came in and served 2 years of a term of a gentleman that had passed away, and then found that I loved it so much to be involved and know what's happening in our area and how to ask questions. No is a perfectly good answer, and then being curious about things and digging more in, from public safety to making our town beautiful, and tax dollars, and all the things. So I was so excited and intrigued by that. So I did that for 6 years, moved out of town, raising our family, and then in 2020, when Governor Walz decided to you know, have crazy overreach, shut down our schools, our churches, sporting programs, different things like that. We pushed back. And so I started a group called Let Them Play Minnesota back in 2020 to get kids back to playing sports and activities, and locked arms with 27,000 people across our state and then also the nation, and figured out ways that we could push back and provide opportunities for our kids to get back to playing sports and then also other activities. And so that was successful and wonderful. So when we were redistricted, every 10 years there's a census, and we our districts borders change a little bit. There was an open seat in this area, and yeah, I got a call from the Capitol and said, "We loved what you did, last year and the year before. Would you be interested in seeing what this job would look like?" And also, people in my community were asking me to consider running, and so I ran for the endorsement, and I was blessed with the endorsement, and I was on the ballot, and I won now another reelection. So I'm serving my third year, second term, and it's been unprecedented. I've heard first coming into a Democrat trifecta, and now this past year being in a historic tie. 67, 67 in the House, and also just tragedies that have struck and things that have been happening. But to be clear, I've always loved politics. I've loved debate. I love making a difference, and I'm very concerned about the trajectory of where we're headed, not only in even rural communities, but in our state as a whole and in our nation. So yeah, it takes time and energy, and it's really humbling, but it's been quite an honor to be able to serve District 17A for sure.
So rewinding to some of your time, at the beginning of your, if you want to call it your political career, when you were
Hmm.
serving on the city council there, that's something where I feel like there's a lot of kind of murkiness when people are trying to understand how to get involved. At least that's been the case for me as I've been trying to learn. Where these races, these seats in these local governments, city council, school board, county board, Technically they're nonpartisan. There's not going to be Democrat or
Hmm.
Republican on the ballot when you're
Right.
going to vote for these people. But you obviously did not magically cease to be right wing if you were right wing back then. When you were sitting in your city councilor seat, I don't think anybody who's sitting in the seat of a county board or a school board or anything like that is somehow nonpartisan. It's You're not conservative or liberal. And I think we see the fruit of that in a lot of our local government. And I wonder if you could maybe shed a little light on that from your experience going all the way back to those days on the city council
Hmm.
on surely there's a conservative way and there's a liberal way to run a town or to run a school district or a county. And so this myth, it seems to me anyway, that it would be a myth of a nonpartisan local government. And while obviously we don't want to be, gnashing at each other's heels all the time in
Mm.
our own backyards, it seems to me that if we want to have a conservative state, have a conservative Minnesota, we want to turn Minnesota red at the state level in 2026.
Hmm.
But it seems to me that we have a situation in these conservative districts of Minnesota where we want to flip the state, but we can't even rule our own backyards like conservatives because we
Hmm.
have our, in the local library here in Glencoe where I live, there's pride flags in the library. They're in the library system that serves both of our neighborhoods, Dassel, Wilmer, Glencoe, Hutchinson, and nine conservative rural counties in Minnesota. The library system has dozens of books that are promoting transgenderism for kids. These things in these
Hmm.
local institutions in areas that vote for Donald
Hmm.
Trump by 70%,
Right.
where they're still run by huge libs. So, from your experience all the way back in the city council days, from your perspective that you've gained, going up
Hmm.
the chain of responsibility in the state government, what do you see as the solution to that?
That is a really big question. Again, I think just showing up the best version of yourself, the most calm, curious, and willing to have hard conversations. I mean, there, I would never like when I was on the city council, that was not the crux of what we were doing. You'll see like people that are fiscally responsible and the others that might have wanted to just go, well, we're going to just raise taxes. We're just going to raise revenue. I had the auditor come back and explain the formula. I dug into the formula of just how they were even taking our like the house evaluations and different things like that and how they were coming up with that. And from being curious and just, and convincing, even if it's a couple of members to say, yeah, let's have the auditor come back. And then having deeper conversations, but just keeping it calm is huge. Having debate is great. I do think it's wonderful. I always have, and I think it's still something to do. Um, I posted a video just about, folks are really concerned about their SNAP benefits running out here in November, and this is federal, okay? But how can we show up, be kind and considerate of others, but then also just still talk about the realities of what is government supposed to have that big a role in all of people's lives? Or are we, me, how I was raised, and just how I show up in life, am I supposed to show up in a different way? And if it's providing a meal or inviting people to come join us and figuring out what's actually happening with society is a big deal. So from a local level, there is big ways for people to get in, dig in, there's so many different task force or committees but those things are really great to learn, areas for people to go and learn, listen to what the needs are of others, listen to what is their fear, what are the big hurdles, the big struggles of different communities, and finding, offering solutions and offering ideas. And a lot of times for me, less is more. I love the free market. I love seeing how things can work out. And that can be scary for a lot of people, and especially folks that have, struggles. So, the thing I would just encourage folks to do is go to meetings or watch them online, listen to what's being talked about. Um, Being involved isn't just sitting there talking in little groups, but it's going, okay, there was a real need for this. How could our church show up? How could us as a family show up? How could our neighbors show up? And then being available for others, I think is really great to open up doors and more lines of communication. Again, the pushback that I get is real, and it is not who I am completely. Politics is not who I am, like, am all defined by, but I enjoy it, and I think it's because I'm curious, and I just know it's very complex, and one thing can impact many other things, and that's people's lives, and so that's what we're going to see a lot of, and we're going to hear more and more of that, as things are shut down federally. But locally, yeah, getting involved in the school board. I've been in many meetings of prior to being a legislator, curriculum boards, different things that, we can talk about what's happening in the school. If it's public school, there's options for private school and homeschool. I mean, there's so many options that people have. Some, cannot utilize all the options because of their work schedules and different things like that. So then how can people get involved? They can attend, show up, ask questions, reach out to your superintendent, your principals, and then consider being a volunteer. I was a volunteer in the public school, and I've also homeschooled my kids for years. I've done different kinds of schooling for my kids throughout the years, and being a volunteer and reading with, middle school age, it was predominantly boys, but it was the best times ever just to kind of give back and be available. So there's ways locally people can show up so they can have influence and support our teachers and paras and the people that are giving to our students, So I hope
When
that
it comes
answers some
to,
of those questions.
I hope so. When it comes to deciding, which of these arenas to try and jump into, there's the school itself, there's the school board, there's county stuff, there's city stuff.
Hmm.
When you first jumped in, obviously it was city stuff. How did you arrive at that decision? Why running for city council instead of running for school board? What kind of evaluations did you put into that other people might be considering now as they're considering how to jump in?
Yeah. So I was brand new married, and at that time, my husband had joined our local volunteer fire department. So every Monday night, I knew he was going to be busy training or doing things, and so I had Monday nights free, and there was two council meetings a month, and it happened to be on Monday nights. So that's truly how somebody had asked me, like, would you ever consider doing this? Like, and I was just like, well, sure, I'll throw my hat in the ring and just see if and they yeah, I can't remember if I was appointed to fill that half of a term. I think that's how it was. And then after that I ran for election. So for me, I was just passionate about our city, and I was really wanting to get involved and see how things work. And at the time, we had a local fire department or a local police department, and now we use, the county for, I don't, it's got to be over a decade now, but yeah, just getting involved from the nursing home, assisted living to all the different the city works, the public works, and who comes to ask for money and how I just was intrigued by it all. And so I stayed very involved, for 6 years, and it I learned so much. And so if people have a passion about education, head the education way. See who's doing it, who's done in the past, meet with people, see if it's something that you want to be involved in. And yeah, and if you have faith, I would consider praying about it too. So,
From those days, earlier I was talking about my little pet theory that there's a conservative way, there's a liberal way to run a town, to run a school board, etc. From would you had you experienced or observed anything that stands out to you from those days that was kind of a sharp or maybe a more clear or obvious distinction between the way that maybe some people who have more liberal inclinations versus more conservative inclinations are going to be making those decisions at the city level, at the county
mhm.
level, from back when you were on a city council?
So again, I'll kind of go back, this is 30 years ago. And so for me, I believe it's different than it is today. I think people are a little bit more bold. I mean, people are bold then, but people, I think, are more bold with bringing forth, you know, some of their viewpoints where maybe back then it was not. that wasn't front and center. It was the people. And so I think what we've missed and what's missing a little bit right now is we can all come with deep rooted convictions and beliefs about things. But how do we show up with integrity? How do we show up with grace? How do we show up and treat others the way that we want to be treated? Is the biggest thing. So I would encourage people to definitely, you know, I think we have to look at how can we show up so others will want to be open and talk to us. And then when there is discourse and there is disagreements, things will work themselves out. I mean, I debate, we've debated for hours till the sun came up down in St. Paul, and we can have very different beliefs. But what we try to do is we're all try to hold up, if it's a Minnesota a new law, or if it's about the children, or if it's about different big topics. I mean, people have big feelings. And I just think, if you're an extrovert or an introvert, it does not matter. We need everybody to be involved. That makes a really healthy, if it's a healthy board or a healthy, um, work environment. It's great to have all kinds of people that will share. And then, and when is it appropriate to push back on something? And, typically only 5% of people feel comfortable talking and like even speaking in public. So get comfortable speaking and being ready with an answer. I mean, that's just something that I've really been trying to work on myself and just be prepared. And it's been working out really well for me so far. I mean, just the experiences I've had and the relationships that I've made with connections, and lots of people are impacted here in Minnesota. So yeah, it's quite an honor.
Do you think there's any role or any possible utility that might be had for people who are a little bit, higher up the food chain like yourself, or people who are running the county level GOPs to be looking for people to run not only for state house, not only for the higher offices, but for those lower nonpartisan races to be kind of, I don't know, talent scouting almost in that way? Because it seems that's just not something I've heard talked about a whole lot. It's like we've got this guy that's going to the meeting over there in Meeker County GOP, or hypothetically,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's got this skill or that skill. He's got the time to
Hmm.
do it. We're gonna back him for, I don't know, Dassel City Council or whatever it is. Do you think is
Hmm.
that kind of thing being done at all? And if
Oh
not, do you
yeah.
think it should be?
Yeah, that's happening. That's happening. And it's happening on both sides of the aisle. I mean, Democrats are looking, Republicans are looking, independents, libertarians. There's all types of groups that look for candidates to be involved. That's from what I've seen, that's been happening quite a bit.
So then, do you
Um,
have any insight on how it comes to be the case that even in the conservative areas like where you and I live, where
mhm.
it does seem like things are so heavily weighted toward the left in our local institutions?
Well, I can't really speak to that other than like for example, I'm not even going to name the school board. There could be folks that are left leaning, but there's also folks that are conservative on that board. And I've had conversations with all school board members, no matter what their political affiliation is. Some are just very bold and forward about it. And even some of the groups that have found candidates or helped, foster those relationships to get new school board members, for example. I think the biggest thing is talking to the people that are serving on the school board already. And I mean, seeing what's working, what's not working. I think we have to get curious about it. And sometimes people think, oh, God, they're not conservative enough because they didn't do X, Y, or Z. Well, then ask why. Sometimes people come to these deductions on why they think somebody did something or didn't do something, but it's way better. Just I would rather someone pick up the phone call and go, or pick up a phone and call me and go, tell me why. And I mean, that's happened to me a couple times. Like, I'm so disappointed you voted this way. I said, oh, actually, my red dot is on this side of my name, not on that side of my name. You know, and they were like, oh my gosh, we thought, we didn't know what happened to you. Did you drink the water down in St. Paul and you changed? But here, they didn't even know which side of the my name was. So we want that. I would want somebody to call me, hey Don, if you're not going to run again, I would want to talk, I want to talk to you and I want to see what your, thoughts are. And, I mean, I would want people to call and reach out. So I think our school board members would love that. People would want to know, tell me what's happening or what you're passionate about or what you're concerned about. And then when people go, well, gosh, we need to get a majority to vote for this in order to change it, to repeal it, or this actually is a legislative action. We can't change the fact that there's this happening in our school because if we don't comply, we are in violation with the state. So then it's finding things out. It's just being curious and it's asking. So that's the biggest thing is I believe that is happening in especially in rural areas and we're seeing it all over the state and nation that people are trying to get their person propped up for any type of office, whether it's the mayor to you know, school board or different things. So it's happening all over the place. So I think that's good, a really good question. So that's great.
Yes, we're coming up on the end of the time that you said you have, so maybe focusing a little more on your current wheelhouse in the
Yeah.
in more statewide stuff. I guess the reason I care about this local stuff is because I think I want to live in a conservative state because I think a conservative state is a good state and it's good for everybody, including the people who are more liberal. A
Hmm.
conservative state's better to live in for a liberal person. Uh,
Hmm.
and in order to have that, I think we need to have conservative local communities, city, county, school, etc. But if that's part of what it takes to move towards a red Minnesota, a conservative Minnesota, a
Hmm.
wholesome, just good state to live in and raise a family, what do you see as the path forward right now across the state to turn this place into, hopefully, God willing, a red state?
Hmm.
I know we have the midterms
Yeah.
coming up in a couple of years, well, a little more than 1 year. What do you think things look like right now in terms of flipping some of these statewide races, flipping the legislature?
Hmm.
What does the picture look like from where you're sitting in St. Paul?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is just, get involved and figure out how you can find everybody that's listening should write a list of 100 people that they know in the state or out of the state, honestly, and to figure out how we can get folks to not only financially support. It sounds wild to be asking for money, but it does take money because, from advertising to signage to, boots on the ground and getting people excited in a movement. We watched that with Trump and the Trump Force captains and having folks figure out how to lock arms and really take and get great data and knocking doors, actually physically talking to human beings is so important and being joyful and excited, being joyful, like taking your conservative values, taking that peace that you have inside of you and figuring out how you can bring more people with you because there's a lot of scared, hurting people there. Some people that have never voted in our district. I mean, it's amazing how many people do not turn out to vote. So I look at it like network marketing. I did that for years. Is we have to believe in the brand and we have to believe in and again, I think sometimes we struggle with that because we have an idea of how red or how this way somebody should be. Yet there's a way that we still have to represent everybody in our district. And so I have to figure out how do I balance some of my conversations so I can be potentially getting an independent voter or getting somebody who's maybe voted Democrat their whole life because that's what their dad or grandpa did, but they're understanding now that this is too extreme. Like this ideology, like I don't want to have I talked to a grandma and she goes, I don't want to have you know, boys in my granddaughter's locker room, you know, because that had happened. Or, you know, it's figuring out how we can take and protect Title IX and protect our girls and but also have compassion for people and these kids that are struggling mentally and physically also. So how do we show up when that? I think it's going to be great to look for your local. I encourage you to look up our local BPOUs, figure out which, you know, where your county is, and then you can use your phone and research where to come to a meeting, come join in, find a Facebook group and join us. And so this next year is going to be super exciting, and I think it's completely possible and doable to have a new governor and flip House seats and get the majority in the Senate and the House. And so we are all working hard, and it does take local people to help us, you know, bring that mission forward. So I'm really looking forward to it. And with what's been happening in Minnesota from the fraud, waste, and abuse to the public safety issues to the mass migration of people moving out of here and not being like a Canadian goose and coming on back, but actually staying away, we have to do something differently. We cannot have people just coming in droves that are dependent on all of our resources. So, yeah, there's big opportunities this next election, and I'm super excited to be a part of it and have more people to come with us in parades, to door knocking, and you know, having town halls, creating events where people can get their questions answered and figure out where they fit. You know, I have one gal, like for example, I just got to hug her and see her. She must have called, I can't remember how many people. I mean, it was just I think it was over 1,000 people she had physically called herself. You know, and that was in regards to like local races as well as for Trump and I just, you know, I hugged her. But she physically couldn't drive around and be in parades, but she called and called and called for hours a day. And it was awesome. So she was instrumental in helping I believe get turn out more voters. So we all have an opportunity to show up in one way or another, you know?
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we got 1 minute left. If we do manage to flip the state, Don Gilman snaps your fingers. What's the first thing that changes?
What's the first? Well, there'll be fraud measures. There'll be accountability for the tax dollars. I mean, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that is going to be on the docket is figuring out how has it worked in other states? I mean, every conference that I've been going to, I'm asking other legislators in other states, and they cannot believe our budget for how many people we have in our state, how big our budget is, our health and human services budget. I'm the co-vice chair in human services finance, and I would say that that's going to be one of the biggest areas is figuring out how we button up DHS and create guardrails around things. And I think public safety will be another huge thing that people will try to help ensure that we will have accountability for for what's happening in our state as well. I'm trying to think what else. And then education will get looked at for sure. The CRT, the different things that are happening. I believe that there's going to be lots of big conversations that will be happening um, from our next governor on that as well.
Well, and I hope we get it done. That sounds like a good list to start with.
Yes.
Well,
Yes. It'll be great.
thank you for being willing to have this conversation. Hopefully, we're able to do more of this in the future, either with yourself or with other local leaders. And I
Yes.
hope it's fruitful for folks in the audience who are trying to figure out where to jump in. That
Hmm.
hopefully each of us can do our own little part to get ourselves a red Minnesota. Thank you for your time, Don.
That's wonderful. And thank you, Jonah, for your willingness to be brave and ask the questions and to be curious and then dig in and help support conservative movement in Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.